Once upon a time, in an odd and dangerous land, there lived several tribes of people, often fearful of each other, often going to war. There were 6 cities in the known world, and the city of Maskul was home to a patriarchal people called the Macho Amarad. Theirs was a culture which valued the so-called masculine values of courage, aggression, and physical prowess. But it was a narrow society in many ways. It was a society where certain emotional expressions were looked down upon, and sometimes punished by the force of law. For example, crying was outlawed in public, and offenders could expect 10 lashes of the whip. Macho Amarad was a monarchy of sorts, with King Dick the 23rd reigning on the throne. Males were the privileged class in the city. Females were either born or captured slaves. Maskul had become complacent in many ways, and this had not gone unnoticed. Not too far away was the city of Flytrap, home to the Vajirans. This, by contrast to Macho Amarad, was a matriarchal state. But here there was no slave class of males. The small number of men who called Flytrap their home were treated very well, in fact, and were employed as breeders by the royal family. The family was headed by Queen Clitoma, who was held in high regard. Here in Flytrap, there was no rigid code of what it meant to be a woman. A woman simply was, and could express herself as she chose. The sisterhood was strong, but Flytrap had been injured by a series of raids by Macho Amarad, and were in a state of fear. They couldn't have stability or the peace they desired unless they were able to defeat or somehow subdue their natural enemies. Strangely, both Maskul and Flytrap shared a common belief, a belief which inspired both excitement and terror, for it was told that somewhere in the Blackish Mountains there sat a guardian who held the key to a city's salvation or its destruction. The guardian held the Phallus of Destiny. This was a tool which could be used for great good or unspeakable evil. Some claimed to have seen the phallus, but their stories were generally regarded as dubious. Clitoma was aware that King Dick was fanatical about getting his hands on the phallus. She knew it could spell doom for her people if he did. The Queen had received word from her spies that the king had recently sent a party into the mountains to retrieve the much sought-after object. Many men had been sent before, but had failed to find it. But according to Clitoma's sources, the king was very confident this time, like he had gotten a hot tip, so to speak. Dick had sent some of his best men. Leading the group was Dominarus, a strapping lad to be sure. He was supported by Insecurus, Agtop, and Testicles. This was a formidable team. The Queen could not afford to let these men get their hands on the object, and so she dispatched her own force, 3 sisters held in high esteem. They were led by Menopausia, a wise older lady who was to direct the trio. She was followed by Slitica and Ovarius, younger women who were eager to get into the fight. Both parties, on their way into the mountains, would have to pass by the city of Fabulous, which was populated exclusively by homosexuals. The men of Maskul were very quick to pass by its colourful walls, fearful that they might become infected by sissy faggotry or whatever. The ladies caught sight of the men of Maskul running into the mountains, and knew that they must make haste. Menopausia had been in these mountains as a girl, and so knew her way around. Dominarus, too, had been here before, but was aware he and the men would most likely have to go into uncharted territory to find the glorious object. The three remaining cities of the known world were curious and troubling places. There was the city of Vladikor, home to the Vladikan. Many generations ago, the Vladikan were the dominant force of the known world. Once, they had been a proud people with a rich tradition of military prowess. Their strength and valour were renowned. But over time, as their wealth grew, they became greedy and paranoid. They built their walls higher than any other city and created elaborate defences at great expense. They invested very heavily in security to the detriment of the community. As the society became more insular, laws were drawn up to protect the blood and soil of Vladikor. No strangers were allowed to pass through the gates of the city. No Vladikan was to have carnal relations with an outsider. Over time, these laws led to the degeneration of the city and its people. Vladikor had been the envy of the old world. It now stood as a warning to the new one. The city of Douchdonia stood at the centre of the known world. Here was a city populated by smug arseholes who considered themselves the intellectual superiors of all other races. The Douchdonians were a people who enjoyed the smell of their own farts more than any other. Perhaps they had some reason to be self-satisfied. They were the most technologically advanced society in the world. Their architecture and water systems were evidence of an intelligent society, but many Douchdonians were lazy and lacked a community spirit. The two most favourite pastimes of the city were casual sex and smoking an intoxicating herb known as sog. Douchdonia had the largest population of any city. It was also unique in that it described itself as democratic, which meant that the citizens elected their rulers by secret voting practices. Inhabitants of other cities had visited Douchdonia and seen their way of doing things. To the rest of the world, this democracy seemed odd and unnecessary. There was no real call for it to be replicated elsewhere. Last and maybe least, in a sense, was the city of Rejectus, also known as the City of the Broken. This was a lawless and impoverished city, inhabited by those who had been exiled by other cities, or those who had fled their previous homes for whatever reason. Rejectus was home to many wicked souls. Certain gangs ran slave rings, while others offered themselves up as mercenaries for the rulers of other cities. Rejectus was widely regarded as the biggest shithole of the known world. Out in the Blackish Mountains, nightfall drew near, and the men of Maskul lit a fire and made camp for the night. King Dick had given them a map, a secret map that only Dick, these men, and those closest to the king had seen before. If they could get a good night's rest and be up early in the morning, then perhaps they could reach the X on the map before sundown tomorrow. Dominorus engaged in conversation with his loyal men. He said, "I know these parts, brothers. A long march lies ahead of us on the morrow. Rest your heads and dream of great glory. I will take first watch." Agtop said, "Soon enough the mighty Phallus will be in our hands. Then let us see all people bow down to King Dick." Testicles had his say. "Children, who have sung many songs about the Phallus of Destiny, will in our time be lucky enough to gaze upon it with their own eyes." Insecurus said, "Let's not get ahead of ourselves, lads. Let's find the thing first, and we should be careful. Vagiran whores might be nearby." And Dominorus again told his boys to settle down. "And no playing with your cocks, lads. You will need all your energy for tomorrow. Rest now." Insecurus was not wrong to be worried about the Vagirans. Nearby, too well hidden for the eyes of Dominorus to spot, were our trio of ladies from Flytrap. The fire that the men had lit had naturally attracted them. They knew they would need to track the men to their intended destination, which could prove challenging. Menopausia spoke to her sisters. "Slitica, you will take first watch. Wake us immediately if those pigs look like they are moving on." And Slitica said, "Of course, sister, rely on me. You both can." Ovarius said, "I will take second watch, Menopausia, if you'll have it." Menopausia said, "Have it I shall. Now, let me dream of the delights of my youth, when the queen was but a princess, and was firm in all the right places." Slitica and Ovarius looked at each other, both trying to contain themselves as they did. Menopausia and Ovarius then laid their heads down for the night. Slitica watched Dominorus through the darkness. He was a handsome, strapping fellow, to be sure, she thought. But he was also a macho pig, and macho pigs needed to be slaughtered. She would be ready for battle at the appropriate time. At dawn, the men of Maskul, led by Dominorus, marched further into the Blackish Mountains. The brave women of Flytrap stayed close behind. Through wind and rain, they all pressed onward, until the men seemingly reached an impasse. The ladies hid behind a bush as the men looked around. Menopausia thought the men looked confused, as if lost. Testicles then produced a piece of wood with a rag wrapped around it. Insecurus got busy with his handy fire-making kit, and soon enough the torch was lit. The men then descended into an opening on the cliff face. The women knew they must follow, or they would lose them. But they didn't have a torch, nor did they have the tools handy to make one. Menopausia ordered the others into the opening, and she quickly followed. They could see the torchlight dimly up ahead, but could not see the ground in front of them. This was seriously dangerous. Nevertheless, they pressed on quietly towards that dim light. The only sounds they could hear were their own breathing and the squeaks of the bats that were hanging high above on the cave walls. The men emerged with great relief from the cave system. It took a little while for their eyes to readjust to the daylight. Once they had, they were met with the sight of lush green trees and plants set against a small waterfall. Next to the waterfall was another opening, this one on the side of a small hill. According to the map, this was the place they needed to be. Now they needed to do what King Dick instructed before he sent them on their way. Dominora stood at the opening and called to the Guardian to show himself. The men were very nervous. They had never been this far from the city walls, and had no idea what to truly expect from this Guardian, although they had heard idle stories and speculation. The women emerged from the cave system. Quietly, they thanked the gods of their own imagination for their safe passage. They could once more see the men clearly up ahead. Once more, they took advantage of plant cover and watched on. The men could hear someone or something coming towards them. They could hear what sounded like grumbling. A small figure emerged from the darkness. The men of Mass School looked upon the little green creature with bloodshot eyes, and then looked at each other. The creature, which could not have been human, stood at about 3 feet tall, and was clearly well fed. It was holding something wrapped in cloth. Dominarus started to speak, but the creature put its finger to its mouth, stopping the son of Macho Amarad in his tracks. The Guardian then gestured for the men to sit down. After jumping on a nearby rock, the creature spoke to them. The Guardian said, "So, you have found me. I have remained hidden here longer than you can imagine. I would offer you something to drink, but I drank it all earlier. So let's get down to it. You have come for the Phallus of Destiny. I will give you what you seek. I will also give you a warning. Better perhaps that you take this object and cast it into the sea, for it has destroyed many before. Its power is great, but I already know that you won't throw away the glorious object. I have already seen the future. Enjoy your future, sons of Macho Amarad."